Welcome to the Build Your Private Practice podcast, a space for Canadian therapists who want to support others, make an impact, and build a sustainable practice that works for them too. I'm your host, Leanne Wood, a registered psychotherapist, group practice owner, and business mentor, and I'm here to help you build a private practice that allows you to keep doing the work you love without burning out. Because the people who need your help the most are counting on you, and you deserve a practice that supports you while you support them. Let's dive in. Hey there! I know building and managing your website can feel like a lot, which is why I'm excited to introduce this episode's sponsor, Clinic Sites. Their websites sync with your Jane account, so your schedule, services, and bios stay up to date automatically. No duplicate work, no chasing down your web person, just a clean, professional site that helps people find you and get booked in. You'll love how easy it is to build your website with Clinic Sites. And to get started, head to start.clinicsites.co and don't forget to use my code BYPP1MO for a free month on your new website. Welcome back to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Let me ask you something important. If you couldn't work for a month or 3 or longer, would your practice survive? I'm not talking about taking a day off for a cold or booking a long weekend. I mean, if something serious happened, an illness, an injury, a diagnosis that forced you to step away for weeks or months, what would happen to your income? What would happen to your practice or your peace of mind? Most of us don't like thinking about those possibilities, but as therapists running private practices that depend on us showing up, it's a conversation we really need to have. And that's why I'm so glad to have Aviva Abraham on the podcast with me here today. Aviva is a financial advisor and insurance expert who specializes in helping Canadian mental health professionals protect their income and their future. She's going to walk us through what disability and critical illness insurance actually cover, why life insurance can be a strategic business tool, and the most common insurance mistakes therapists make so you can avoid them. If you've ever thought insurance is too expensive or I'll figure that out later, this episode is for you. Aviva, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here as well today.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I'd love to start at the beginning, by having you share a little bit with our community about, what's really drawn you to work with therapists and private practice owners.
Well, there's actually a lot of synergy because dealing with critical illness policies, disability policies, it's all about health. And
Mm,
so I was always talking to professionals who deal in the health space, and
mhm,
they understand more about what people go through. And so I networked a lot and spoke a lot with mental health professionals, other healthcare professionals, and
mhm,
as well, people that came from either big businesses and then started their own practice and then
mhm,
didn't have coverage for themselves and were looking for coverage for
mhm.
themselves. I saw a bit of a gap in the marketplace there.
Yeah.
And so that's been the history of how I started out talking to people like that.
Isn't it amazing how the people, that we're working with or talking with, they can be, the people that we end up spending more and more time with in our work. So that's really cool. That's really cool. I want to, dive right into the heart of, what I was talking about in the introduction there. This idea of, what happens if a therapist gets sick and can't work for a while, like not just a day, but like longer, how can they keep their practice afloat and, keep from losing their practice? What are your thoughts?
Well, like you mentioned in the introduction, like it's hard to think about that, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it
Hmm.
or think about it, especially if you're healthy and you're doing well. A lot of people just think they'll continue that way. But the truth of the matter is, over the course of years, there are periods of time where people do become disabled for extended periods. And if you're a business owner,
Hmm.
that could mean the difference between your business surviving and not surviving if you're set up properly. And so taking a bit of time, I'm a very positive person, but I believe in hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. Like, just be prepared. And so that's where insurance comes in, that it can literally, and I've seen this in quite a few cases, just save a business from having to close its doors. And COVID was a really good example of that.
Hmm.
So when it comes to um, insurance, you just have to think about what would happen, like you said, if you don't show up to your business for 3 months. Oh, do you have people that can step in for you? But what would happen to your revenues? Would they fall off completely? Or can somebody take over your client base? Um, how would additional money help you? And that's where disability and critical illness come in. And they're really two very different things. So, disability insurance really is a replacement for your income. So, whatever monthly income you're making, whether you're a sole proprietor or you're incorporated, whatever you're making each month, if you have disability insurance, it would replace most of that insurance, most of that income that you're making, and give you the money that you need to live. But what about your business? If you need money to replace you and hire somebody else instead of you, that's where you may want a different type of insurance, like there's something called business overhead, and we could discuss that later. But there are different things that you can do to make sure that your business can continue. Then there's critical illness insurance, and that's sometimes it overlaps with disability and sometimes it's very different because critical illness insurance pays out if you suffer from one of the 25 covered conditions. And you can be still going into work and claim on your critical illness. So that's one way it's different than disability. The other way it's different from disability is that it's a lump sum. So once you get a payout, that contract is over, you don't have any more insurance, you get a lump sum payout. They're both tax-free payouts, so that's really good to know as well.
Hmm.
But the critical illness insurance, like if somebody has cancer, they may not be able to claim on disability if they're not missing 90 days of work, but they could get potentially a critical illness payout. And that money could pay for medications, it could pay for other expenses that they have. But disability and critical illness really cover off some of the same risk, but some very different risks.
Yeah, thank you for explaining, that distinct difference because I know for many people they kind of seem like the same in some ways. And so understanding if I'm hearing you right, disability insurance is your income replacement and critical illness is kind of like a expense coverage, right? If there's
Health,
expenses you weren't
like health
anticipating. Yeah,
expenses.
like
Yeah.
health expense. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. You can actually spend it on whatever you want. Like, I have a client who took his whole family back. He had a heart attack. When he
Mhm.
recovered, he took his whole family on a trip with that money he got from his critical illness, and he took them back to his home country. He was originally from Italy, and he
Mhm.
took them back for like a lifetime experience. So you could
Aw.
use it for
Mhm.
anything, but the
Mhm.
main reason is to take the stress off of you so that you have money to pay for medication, to pay for your living expenses if you need, pay down your mortgage. It could be for anything.
Right. Yeah, when I think about, whether you're talking heart attack, cancer, or really anything that comes up that way, the last thing you want to be worried about is your finances.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can use it for your business. So if
Yeah.
you need that money to hire someone else,
Mhm.
people have done that as well. It's one of the strategies I recommend for business owners is you get
Mhm.
enough that if some to spend on what you need, but if you
Yeah.
need to hire someone else, then you have that money to spend to hire someone else for your business.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit more about that, Aviva? Like just in terms of how you can use insurance as a smart business decision and how you can actually use insurance to, run your business or to do things differently in your business? Hmm.
So there are two aspects to insurance. So one is the risk management, protect you against something catastrophic.
Hmm.
But then there's also the aspect of um, tax efficiency. So life insurance and critical illness and disability, when they're set up properly, they're all paid out tax free. And
Hmm.
that's a huge benefit because very few things in Canada these days are tax free.
Hmm.
And life insurance or insurance, personal insurance, are
Hmm.
one of those last holdouts when it comes to tax-free assets. So when it comes to the life insurance part, you could set up your business that you either key person insurance for yourself or a key person in your business, or if you have a partner,
Hmm.
so you could buy out each other's shares if something happened to one of you. So if you have
Hmm.
a buy-sell agreement, if you have a partner, life insurance is a great tool for funding that buy-sell agreement. And
Hmm.
it really provides that money if something happens to a partner. Usually there isn't all that cash sitting around in a business where they could buy out the partnership shares. And so life insurance is the most cost effective and tax effective way to pay for that. Also, once a business is established, um, a lot of clients we have will set up what we call permanent insurance that has like an investment aspect to it, where
Hmm.
it can help you tax shelter your money. So if you have extra money in your business, you can then put that into the life insurance policy as opposed to investments in a business that get taxed.
Hmm.
And then you can use that policy in retirement. So it's something that is very cost effective and tax effective for quite a few purposes.
Hmm. Now, can you also use it around, like we talked about, like partnerships, but can you also use it for succession planning or other things like that? Or would that be like not an area you could use it?
So actually, when it comes to succession planning, if somebody's selling their business, they don't want to sell their life insurance policy with that. It's more
Hmm.
you want to use it for you and your family. So
Hmm.
if you have life insurance that you're setting up, then you want to know that you're going to get to keep it so that you can benefit from it. Um,
Hmm.
and then whatever you don't use from that can be passed along to your family. But when it comes to succession planning, that's where there are one or two other strategies that people use when they're looking to sell their business. But I
Hmm.
find that most people, even as they get older and getting closer to retirement, still need the life insurance as the key person. Maybe that's one area where you can say succession planning will help if you've got
Hmm.
key person insurance, somebody key in your business.
Yeah.
But still, critical illness and disability can play a key role in the business when you are as you're nearing retirement.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people, have looked into this or, have really considered it, but it's a really interesting idea, I think, to be thinking about not just the disability or critical illness piece of it, but also thinking about, how could I use this to fund, a purchase of my practice. When you think about, and I'm not an expert on capital gains tax, but what I'm hearing from you is that these proceeds can be used in a tax-free way, and I'm thinking this is sounding like something worth investigating for a lot of therapists.
For sure, for sure.
Hmm.
Because as I was saying before, CRA has closed a lot of loopholes when it
Yeah.
comes to income splitting,
Hmm.
tax benefits in a business, and so life insurance is one of those few tools that you can use that
Hmm.
will help you cut your tax bill, cut your
Yeah.
tax liability in the future,
Hmm.
and be able to pass along more of your money to your family.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, how does anybody figure out how much coverage is enough? Like, that just seems to be like, that seems like $1 million question almost. Like, how do you know? How do you know how much is enough?
Yeah, I do get that question often. So again, when it comes to disability, it's a little different than critical illness. So
Mhm,
disability is definitely based on what income you're making. So the
mhm,
insurance company also wants you to be motivated to come back to work. So if
mhm.
somebody, let's say, makes $100,000, they're not going to insure the full 100,000. First of all, you pay tax on it and you don't bring it all home. So
Yeah.
they take the after tax amount and then they reduce that a little bit because they want to know that you're going to be motivated to come back to work. Um,
Mhm,
Again, if you're making $100,000, you may not have that much in your personal expenses. You may not need to cover off the full 100,000. So I'd say really look at what your monthly expenses are, what you really need, and if budget is really an issue, then just at least cover off your basic living expenses that you know you would need if you ever weren't able to work. And then there is an option within disability where you can increase your coverage without having to go through medicals again. And so if you ever do want to increase it, you'd be able to. So that's a great option to have because you don't have to take the full amount right now. You can start off with a basic amount that will protect you and then increase it as time goes on. When it comes
mhm,
to critical illness,
mhm.
um, I usually say try to cover off 2 times income because people are surviving serious illnesses like heart attack and cancer. They're surviving up to 5 years these days, but they can't work the way they were working before. Like a lot
Right.
of times, people have to cut back a little, or they're just not earning as much, or their expenses are higher. So we usually say take 2 times what it is you're earning in a year, but if you cannot afford that, there are strategies and there are ways that I work with people that I show them, let's get you this coverage, whether it's a more basic amount or a shorter term, like instead of taking a 20-year policy, take a 10-year policy, just to know that you're covered for the next 10 years. And
Mhm.
we can deal with how to extend that time or increase that amount. We could deal with that afterwards. But just know if something happened to you yesterday, you're covered.
Mhm. Yeah. So when you say 2 times income, you're talking annual income.
Yeah.
And when you say that, do you mean gross or net?
So I would say it would be net.
Yeah.
If you also want to cover certain areas in your business, that's where I was mentioning before business overhead expense. So if you're
Mhm,
renting a space, if you have employees, there is an actually very, very affordable type of insurance that kicks in when you're disabled that will pay for your rent, will pay for your employees and your fixed expenses so that your business can continue if you're disabled. So not
mm,
only do you get your income for you to live personally, but if you need your business to continue, you know your rent is paid, you know your employees are paid. So
mhm,
that's a
mhm,
really great insurance, and not a lot of people talk about that one, but it's
mhm.
very useful for business owners to know that they can get their regular expenses covered.
Amazing, amazing. And how do you figure out for life insurance how much is enough?
So it depends on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Do you have a family? Do you have dependents? Because really, if you're single and you have no dependents, you don't really need life insurance.
Okay.
But if you have a partner, if you have any kids that rely on you, if you have siblings or parents that rely on you, then you want to know that they would be looked after. And so we generally also say it depends how young you are, what you're earning, and we look
Mm,
at a multiple of that. And it used to be 5 years ago, we would say, you know what, $500,000 of insurance if you've got a family would be enough to help them for the first few years if you weren't around. But with inflation and how the cost of everything, especially in the GTA, has
mhm,
increased so much these days, that we're saying now we gotta look at a little bit of a higher amount, like $500,000 or 250. Like we had some clients taking 250,000 of coverage. It doesn't go very far these days.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's really assessing who's dependent on you. How
Hmm.
much would they need? How many years do you want to know that you're making sure that they're looked after?
Right, right. Okay. Now, I think, insurance companies, people have a little bit of resistance and a little hesitation there. And, something that I hear often is, but will insurance actually pay out when I need it? And there's this fear that it won't pay out. And so, how do you kind of navigate that?
So, we definitely get that expressed to us many, many times since the insurance industry has a bad rap. But I
Hmm.
have to say that it's in three specific areas. When it comes to emergency travel, you hear all those stories that
Hmm.
people go to Europe, they'll go to the islands and they have a health issue and the insurance company didn't pay. But that's because um, they had a pre-existing condition and they didn't read, the rules in terms of what's covered and what's not.
Mm.
And so travel insurance has been in the news a lot. The other area where people have not been paid out is when it comes to bank mortgage insurance. And I did a whole blog post on that.
Mm.
Bank mortgage insurance, when you get life insurance through your bank to secure the mortgage that you took out on your home, that really benefits the bank. They don't really ask medical questions. They don't do a full medical check on you until when somebody submits a claim. And so many times there are ways that they get out of paying that. And I warn clients against getting that all the time because it is not guaranteed. Individual life insurance, where you go through a whole medical, that's a lot more solid coverage, and they pay out like 98% of the time. The few times that life insurance hasn't been paid out, it's because answers were not given, accurate answers were not given, or people actually lied on an application. But
Mm.
otherwise, 98% of the um, policies do pay out. And same thing for critical illness. Sometimes people will make a claim, but it's not for a covered condition. Like they would want to claim for COVID. COVID's not a covered condition. There are 25 listed conditions. So sometimes people will submit a claim and it wasn't for something, I mean, it's in their contract what's covered, they didn't check.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
the third area where people have not had a payout is when it comes to auto or home insurance.
Mhm.
They've also had a lot of times where it said it's not, a claim has been submitted and it hasn't been paid out. But like I was saying, critical illness, life insurance has a much higher payout. Disability is a little bit stricter on when they determine is someone really disabled. If they're not, usually like there are a lot of people that will um, be on disability, let's say for 3 months or 6 months, but then they're asked to go back to work.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it is sometimes harder to get approved for a claim on disability because they have very strict rules with that.
Got it. Okay.
So I hope that clarified it a little.
So read your policy.
Yeah,
know
definitely.
know what it covers. Don't take the bank insurance, and yeah, and answer the questions truthfully. That's what I'm hearing.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Amazing.
summarize that very well.
Now, Aviva, for anyone who is listening to this today and they're thinking, oh my goodness, there's all this stuff I now need to do for my practice to make sure that it is taken care of, can you like break this down? If people walk away from this episode and there's one or two things that they should do, what would the top priority be for them to better protect their practice?
So I would say, yeah, if you just take a few minutes to just really think about what you were saying at the beginning of this podcast, what would happen if you couldn't show up in your business for 3 months? What would happen? And just clarify there what it is you would need to keep your business going. And
Mhm.
then I'd say speak to an independent advisor. So somebody that's not tied to a bank, somebody that's not tied to one company, because different insurers have different products that could be better for you. When it comes to life insurance, almost all the insurers are the same or similar. But
Mhm.
when it comes to critical illness and disability, there are a few insurance companies that are leaders in the market, and there's a reason for that. So speak to an independent advisor that can explain to you which would be the best policy for you, what would be covered, what would not be covered. Get an assessment of, what could be a good setup and plan for you. So
Mhm.
even if you don't implement all of it right away, like let's say you're thinking about critical illness and disability and life insurance, it's a lot to put into place all at once for some people. And so
Mhm.
at least take that step and decide which one you want. For some people, disability is more important or they're more worried about it. For some
Mhm.
people, because of maybe family issues, they're more concerned about critical illness and protecting against cancer or heart attack. So decide what's more important to you and at least implement one or put in a portion of, let's say, on a smaller level, disability and critical illness, because that will help you the most in your business to start. And just put it on your agenda and list of priorities to do in
Mhm.
the next 3 months,
Mhm.
6 months, whatever it is you can handle.
Amazing. I love how you really brought that down to, figuring out what's the most important in terms of, yourself, but also keeping your practice going in that. So, Aviva, I just want to say thank you so much for walking us through these often overlooked but absolutely vital parts of private practice ownership. Your insights are going to help so many therapists feel more informed and more empowered. So, thank you.
Thank you. I hope so. I really hope so. And if anyone is interested, I actually put together a guide specifically for healthcare professionals who have their own practice, have their own business, to help them if you're in startup mode, if you're in growth phase, if you're as you're getting closer to retirement, what to think about. And there are quite a few things that we haven't even discussed. So it just lots to consider, but it's a guide that can help you and clarify things for you. And anyone that emails me, I'd be happy to send them a copy of that guide.
Amazing, amazing. Well, we will be sure to include that email address to connect with Aviva in the show notes below here. Now, to all of our listeners, please remember the question that we started with. If you couldn't work for a month or more, would your practice survive? And, if your answer to that question made you feel a little uneasy, that's okay, because now you have the knowledge to start changing it. Whether it is disability coverage or critical illness protection or life insurance as part of your business plan, what you put in place today can protect your future, your income, and your peace of mind. And if you want more support to build a private practice that's sustainable, protected, and aligned with your life, visit our website, buildyourprivatepractice.ca, for resources and programs that can help. And until next time, keep building a practice that supports you. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Build Your Private Practice podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a fellow Canadian therapist who needs this. And remember, the work you do matters. Keep showing up, keep holding space, and keep building a practice that works for you. If you're looking for practical tools or support to grow your practice with more clarity and confidence, head to buildyourprivatepractice.ca. There's lots waiting for you there. I'll see you next time.